Okay, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us today for our Esri Water Conference sneak peek. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Krista Campbell. I'm an industry specialist with Esri's Global Water Practice. Joining me today are two of my water team colleagues, David Topman, our industry manager, and Jason Channon. Jason is a solutions engineer on our team. David, Jason, and I are going to go through what you need to know about the upcoming Esri Water Conference. And as usual, David's going to go ahead and get started. David?
Thank you, Krista. Yeah, this is to this month's webinar is a little different, but it's actually we found January's to be our month to kind of give everyone a preview of the upcoming Esri Water Conference that we have in February. So actually, though, we would like to start off this webinar with a polling question.
Here we go. So are you registered for the water conference? This is our only poll today, so if you just take a few seconds to answer yes or no. We're just a little curious about who's attending our sneak peek. Very good. It looks like about half of you are registered and half of you are not. David, back to you.
Okay. Well, yeah, that kind of helps us understand the audience out there. So for those that are registered, definitely getting a sneak peek, and then for those that have not registered, hopefully some of this content will convince you to register, or if you're able to make it to Florida. But we just wanted to kind of walk through some of the conference purpose, and then Krista is going to walk you through some more of the conference details through the agenda with a story map, and then we, as she said, we'll turn it over to Jason for a technical sneak peek, some of the things that are coming up with the Esri, ArcGIS for water utilities. And then, yes, if you have any questions, by all means, let us know. So I think we'll go ahead and get started here. This whole concept of One Water, many of you that have maybe attended these webinars in the past know that prior to coming to Esri, I came from Colorado Springs Utilities, and we managed both the water resource side, our watersheds, as well as the water distribution side, the pipe side, the utility side. So it always made sense for me to, manage both sides, if you will, the supply and demand. And when I first kind of came on board for water, may have known when I came to Esri, I was doing public works and the engineering and surveying. But when I got to focus on water, it just made sense to bring these two groups together. So, we did that in Austin, and I'm pleased to say we're going to do that coming up here in Florida, and I would think forevermore, that the Esri Water Conference always has this notion of bringing all water professionals together, and that's one of the things that we want to kind of focus on with this conference, at becoming one of the premier water conferences. So, water first, and then kind of GIS second, if you will. We all use GIS in our daily jobs, but it really is a forum to bring water professionals together with a common thread of GIS. But really, we want to, if you kind of take a look at some of the content as well, I mean, we're covering, from the watersheds to the pipes. We're definitely, going from water supply to water demand, from flood to drought, and even kind of this year some discussion on water quality. So folks that are dealing with the lead and copper rules to the TMDLs on the watershed. So really we're bookending both spectrums of the water resource and water utility field. So we're trying real hard to kind of bring lots of content together, get all of you folks in one facility, and just spend a couple of days together talking again about all things water. So, we're doing that with what we believe it to be some great content. So we've got 3 plenary speakers lined up that I think will be very interesting and kind of represent that bookend. And then we've got lots of great customer presentations, of course the Esri Tech sessions, the business partner exhibition, going on some tours, and then we also have our flood symposium that was of great success last year in Austin, and we were kind of asked to bring, make sure we had that again. So we're actually adding a workshop. But again, Krista's going to walk through a lot of that detail. So I just wanted to cover, I guess, some of the highlights that are coming up. And so definitely during the plenary, I'll be kicking it off and talking in more detail about this One Water vision. And this is not my vision. This is really the industry's vision. You see more and more content out there on the internet and such on, to really achieve sustainable practices in water. We have to manage both supply and demand. We have to basically create that line of sight from the reservoir to the homeowner's faucet. We have to really address all facets of that water life cycle. And of course, some of the things going on in Flint, Michigan have us now embracing service lines as well. So it really is, we'll go into more detail to kind of kick off that conference. But there you go. Our first speaker is Thomas from DC Water. They're one of the leaders in addressing this lead service line issue right up front. So he's going to talk about lead service line transparency. They've used ArcGIS web maps, and they've communicated the service line issue from what they own in the stub and to what customers own in the yard, that whole service line from main to house, just what their records show. And they show the lead, they show the non-lead, and then they have the data unknowns. And so they've taken a very proactive approach to engaging their community. So there's some of the leaders in the nation on this lead service line issue. Then we have Ed Clark, director from the National Water Center there, this new center that's fired up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He's going to talk about the transformation of NOAA's water prediction service. So what we've been working with lots of federal agencies between NOAA and the USGS and our new flood modeling that will have more technical sessions on, user presentations in our flood symposium on how all that's being brought together to basically model flooding on 2.7 million river segments. So we're very fortunate to have Ed join us. And then one of our other speakers, Steve Dix, he's their technical information tech bureau chief at Southwest Florida Water Management District, and he has the title of the longest presentation, the geospatial technologies and data as core infrastructure for water management. And really what he means is GIS is laced into every business process that they have at Southwest Florida. So he's going to talk about how they use GIS in every facet, but he's also having the conference in Florida. What they're doing at Southwest Florida really, they encounter a lot of the unique challenges in Florida with the karst topography. As they say, groundwater is simply, or surface water is simply groundwater that you can see. There's lots of interesting challenges, and Steve Dix is an excellent speaker. He's been on our UC plenary stage, so we're really pleased that Steve can come join us and talk about the work that he's doing there. So when we go into our sessions, and Krista will kind of go through these in greater detail, but we really have the gamut on customer presentations. So we're going to be talking about lots of things about physical infrastructure in terms of, capital improvements and field inspections, different things that are being kind of innovative in the field of managing your physical infrastructure. And with respect to systems, of course, we've got some of the enterprise innovation, and one of the things that I'm really excited about, some of the things that we're doing with what we're calling paper to platform. That really is for those small systems that just may not have much of a GIS, but really to walk in through the entire process of going from, say, just paper records all the way into managing your data on, on your iPhone with a collector. And then, of course, we have all things hydrologic and hydraulic topics with climate change and flooding and different modeling hydrologic modeling and watershed management. More emphasis this year maybe on water quality. So lots of papers talking about how they're using GIS to manage water quality and share information. Again, kind of referring to some of the EPA programs of source water protection. And then, of course, we also have some partner solutions that you'll be able to dive into in presentations as well as the exhibition floor. And again, Krista will go into that in a little more detail. And then our technical sessions. We have Esri, our water solution engineers, leading individual sessions that, going to cover all facets of data management. Of course, our field mobility, some things on the ops dashboard. Of course, again, all things web GIS, and very specifically, again, that paper to platform. I think even seasoned GIS shops will learn some things in that paper to platform. We have lots of new tools that have always make it a little bit easier. As we've attended conferences throughout the year, we have some water folks come up and say, yeah, this GIS stuff, it's still too hard, and all we need to do is spend about 5 to 10 minutes showing them some of the tools in Microsoft Excel and showing them tools on our iPhone, and all of a sudden they're saying, well, wow, that's not so bad. And they're kind of jumping right in as well on that paper to platform. And then, of course, again, flood. It seems to be we're having 100-year floods every single year now. So Esri is really jumping into the game with lots of new tools for managing flood. And so with that, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Krista, and she's going to go through the agenda in detail. Krista?
Thanks, David. So we're going to just get started with the basics for those of you that don't know. The Esri Water Conference is in February. It's going to be in Orlando, Florida at the DoubleTree Hilton. I have a quick slide here that's going to show you just a summary of all of our events and activities that you can find at the Esri Water Conference. This agenda is online at esri.com/events/water. So if you haven't been there yet, you can take a look at this agenda for yourself. As David mentioned, we do have a good selection of technical sessions. We have 11 tech sessions that Esri staff is going to be presenting. The list is also found online with a description, and Jason's going to go ahead and discuss this in more detail after I do, and he'll highlight some of the important stuff you need to know. The paper sessions, we're going to have 14 paper sessions, so these are your peers that are going to be presenting their challenges and successes with GIS. These are a list of the paper session topics. This isn't online yet, so this is part of your sneak peek. These are the topics that we're going to be covering with our user presentations at the conference. We're also going to have a hands-on learning lab. So the hands-on learning lab is a self-paced learning environment. There's about 20 laptops that we will have in the lab, and then you can go through opportunities to learn like these sessions listed. And there are more than this, so whatever your needs are, hopefully there's a session that will be beneficial to you. And this is included with the conference. It's open most of the time that we will be there. In addition, we have free data health checks. The data health checks are almost completely booked. So if you're one of those that are registered already and you're interested in a data health check, you'll want to go ahead and go to this page and check out what's needed to get signed up. And if you haven't registered yet and you're interested in this, I suggest you get moving. I think we only have about 4 or 5 slots left for these data health checks. David mentioned the flood symposium. We are having the flood symposium. In addition to that, we're going to have a flood workshop, which David mentioned, but again, this is not listed on our website yet. We've added the half-day flood workshop that's going to follow our half-day flood symposium. We're going to include a lot of topics like archhydro, flood inundation mapping. It's going to be somewhat technical. There's going to be some focus on the Florida aspect of flood, and this is included with your water conference registration. So if you're interested in attending the flood workshop, be sure to check your schedule and make sure you're there for the whole day on Thursday. The Southwest Water Plant Tour, which was being offered on our website, is sold out. So hopefully if you're interested in that, you got a spot on that tour. What we have done is we've added a second tour with Reedy Creek Improvement District. This one we've just added, so I know there are still spots left on this tour. If you haven't registered yet, when you do register, there's going to be an option to sign up for this tour. It's not listed on our website yet, so you're not going to see anything there. This is a little bit of a sneak peek. We are going to post it in the next couple of days so that people know we'll be offering this. We are also offering a 2-day training class in conjunction with the conference. Sadly, it's not included. The workshop is $1,000. I think we're pretty full on the workshop too, so if you're interested in this, be sure to check into it. If you have more questions or want to learn more, go ahead and shoot me an email. We can follow up with you on the ArcGIS for Water Utility Workflows training. And as David mentioned, we do have an expo this year. We haven't had an expo in previous years, so this is new to our conference. As you see here, we have a couple of really great sponsors that are helping us to bring the expo to you guys. We have a list of exhibitors on the left that you will be able to visit in our expo. It's a small expo, but we'll see how it goes. It may end up growing quite a bit.
So Krista, yeah, I'd love to jump in just and talk about our exhibition. So, you know, we've always been trying to address the attendees' needs, and I think I remember in Portland we just kind of had a social and folks were there, we chatted, and then, you know, we asked for a little more exhibitor presence. We weren't sure if the exhibit floor was what really folks wanted, and so Austin, we didn't have one there, but everyone's saying, no, we love to be able to go and talk to specific exhibitors. So yeah, so we've brought that to the table this time with an exhibition floor. Again, not a huge floor, but I think that will start to grow. But you'll see most of our, you know, our CMMS vendors are there. So if you're interested in asset management, of course we have folks there, CCTV inspection. We also have some GIS folks or GPS folks. So you'll be able to kind of take a look at that high accuracy collector with high accuracy. We've done webinars with LEAX Water Authority in Ohio that very specifically talked about how they were getting centimeter resolution, you know, with their iPads by using high accuracy. And so I think folks, you know, better talk to some of our vendors there. So just lots of great vendors. You can ask specific questions about their solutions. So we're actually quite excited to have a much greater vendor support this year. So, Krista.
Yeah, it's something new that we're excited to bring to the conference. In the past, we had sent out surveys asking our partners as well as our customers if they were interested in an exhibition. So it's something we've been considering since the start of our conference in 2015. This year just seemed like the year. We had a lot of response that an expo was desired. We had a lot of partner participation and inquiries. So if you are registered for the conference and you're coming, be sure to check out the expo. And lastly, I know I went through these kind of fast. David covered some of the topics, so I don't want to be repetitive. But lastly, this is a great networking opportunity. Right now we have over 200 people registered for the conference, and we're looking to gain quite a bit more before the actual conference. These are the locations of those that are currently registered. So we have people already registered from all over the world. And in the past, that survey I mentioned, a lot of our customers really found the networking a positive benefit. It was something important to them, and some of them have maintained relationships throughout the year and checked with each other and helped each other. So I don't want to ignore that opportunity at the conference because I always found that really useful when I was a customer. And I think building your network and getting to know new people can really help you to move forward with your GIS because they've maybe already done something that you want to do, and they can give you a little heads up on those challenges that might face you. So anyways, that's all I have. We are going to do a Q&A question at the end, so be sure to post your questions in our Q&A dialog box. We'd like to answer any of them. Like I said, I know I went through this quickly, so any questions, go ahead and post, and I will be happy to follow up at the end of the webinar. We're going to go to Jason now, and he's going to talk a little bit about the technical sessions that are going to be offered. Jason?
Excellent. Thanks, Krista. All right, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Again, my name is Jason Chen, and I'm a solution engineer on Esri's global water practice. There are a total of 6 solution engineers now on the water practice. And throughout the last year, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of you all, our customers, and in doing so, that really helped us to plan out the technical sessions that we would put together to support the conference. And so as Krista mentioned earlier, you can find a list of those technical sessions here on the Water Conference webpage under the agenda and the technical sessions. And if you expand on each of these, you can read a little brief blurb about the session itself and then the presenters from the Esri technical team that will be presenting. But what I thought I would do is just kind of quickly cover each of these in a little bit of detail, and then I picked about a half dozen or so to kind of go into more detail, ones that I thought would be really relevant. So the first one, ArcGIS content, how to find and use data. This one's going to cover really all of the information that's out there. You know, if you've used ArcGIS Online before, you probably know that there is quite a bit of information. We have all of the living atlas data, the demographics, all the powerful information, and we'll be kind of talking about those in the context of water and how we see water utilities utilizing that information. It's also going to cover how to make your information discoverable. So if you're an organization that shares information publicly or with other organizations, some tips and tricks on how to share that information, creating keywords and tags and things to make that information more accessible. And then also we're going to cover the open data site, how to create open data and how to effectively share that information. The next one is data management strategies for field data collection. This one is going to cover, you know, how to set up your data to get it out in the field and to utilize in web applications, right? Data for field use is often very different from what we might have in a internal web application. So it's going to cover some of the best practices around serving that information out to the mobile workforce. It'll also deal with task-based work management, combining Navigator and Workforce, not necessarily how to set that information up, but what to do with the data that's collected out in the field. And then lastly, there's going to be a section on QA and QC of field data and how you internally edit that data and move that information that comes from the field around and get it into your various business systems or into your system of record. Another one called Data Salad, slicing, dicing, and serving to users. Will really cover information about how to work with common data formats, how to bring CAD data in. There's some information on ArcGIS Pro and some of the tasks that you can create in Pro to structure these common data migration workflows. They'll also cover the ArcGIS Python API and some tools and best practices around automating common ETL workflows. They'll also cover a little bit of geoprocessing and then geo-event extension or the geo-event server and how that can be used to summarize data and serve that up to end users as well. Another section or another tech session is going to focus on engaging citizens by providing public information. This is an area where, you know, throughout the course of the year we heard a lot from utilities and organizations that they struggle with. How do we effectively share our information without making too much of it accessible? So we'll cover, you know, why sharing information with the public is important, some best practices to keep your data safe. They'll share some customer examples, and then go into some of the different templates and story maps that are available to help share information. This one will also feature open data and how open data can be different from everything public facing, how to create an open data site, and then share some examples there as well. The next one is flood, protecting people and property with GIS. I think this one's especially relevant. You know, as David said, it seems like every year we're having a 100-year flood, and there's, you know, some pretty significant flooding going on around the country right now. So we'll cover how to use GIS to determine, you know, what flood will look like and what assets could potentially be affected by flooding. They'll cover some tools on using real-time data sources, right, to bring in that information and help determine when a flood is going to occur. There'll be some tools on recovering from flood and using ArcGIS to conduct damage assessment and validate some pre-planning efforts. And then also, really just how to respond, how to plan for, respond to, and recover from flooding events faster and more efficiently and more effectively. Another one is getting started with ArcGIS, moving from paper to platform. As David said, this really was designed as kind of a beginner course, but there's also some stuff in there that I think everybody can benefit from. Another is operations dashboard for ArcGIS, so learning how to bring in various data sources and real-time information and monitor that information for the operations of the utility or the organization. Another is optimizing field operations with ArcGIS. So this is really going to cover some of those applications, the collector, navigator, workforce, survey 123, and ultimately how you can support your organization's mobile needs with all of those different applications. And then we have a whole series on WebGIS. And so we have the intro to WebGIS, which is really the foundation, and that's configuring a web mapping portal, whether that's using ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS. We'll walk through how to configure a web mapping portal and what's involved with all of that. The next one is WebGIS configuring applications. So this looks at all of the different application templates and web application builders that are available to configure applications to support WebGIS in your organization. And then the third one is really more of an advanced WebGIS topic, and that's configuring real-time information and geoanalytics. So we'll look at processes to bring in real-time information as it relates to water loss. That's kind of the example that we chose, and how to bring that information in, and then how to analyze that in maybe some different ways. And we'll use some different tools that you probably haven't seen before to do some of that. So I'm going to just do a little bit deeper dive into a couple of these. Specifically the WebGIS series. Again, the first one is configuring a web mapping portal. So we'll walk through the actual portal itself or the ArcGIS Online interface and how to brand that for your organization. So here's an example of one that we've put together to support the conference, and we've branded it with the conference banner and some information. And we'll go into also how to set up groups. So within the organization, there's several different groups that you can set up, and we'll cover some tools that are available as part of our solutions as well to help sort of automate and streamline this process of setting up groups and supporting collaboration. We'll also go into content, how to add content to your portal, how to register your ArcGIS server services, how to publish out information, and then some tools for deploying actual solutions into your organization. We'll also cover some of the user administration, inviting users and managing those users in the organization, and then the overall administration of an org, how to look at who's using your information within the org, looking at the analytics and so forth with that. Then the next one is configuring web applications, and so there's some various parts to that. We're going to look at all of the different apps. ArcGIS features a ton of different apps that are available, and so we'll navigate through the different apps, what apps are designed for which types of users, and then we'll look at things like the web application templates. So ArcGIS features a whole suite of configurable apps that you can utilize and configure for your users. And so just to kind of give you a quick demonstration here, I'm going to just really highlight what we mean by those configurable apps. So here I've got a web map looking in ArcGIS Online, and if you're not familiar with this process, one of the things you can do with a web map is share that web map out through a web application. And so you first choose who you want to share the information with, whether it be public or your organization or specific groups, and then you can create a web application. And so there's a whole variety of different web application templates here that are just available for you to utilize with your web maps. Some of those include like the basic viewer, there's others for crowdsourcing. One of my favorites is this information lookup. It's a very simple but powerful application that you can use to communicate information such as serviceability, whether or not somebody's inside the service boundary of the utility or organization, or communicating things like outages and water advisories. So there's a whole list of different web application templates here that you can take a look at. The other piece to that is the web application builder. So when those web app templates don't necessarily fit the needs, there's also a web application builder, and that gives just a little bit more sophistication. So you can expand on the capabilities of those templates and add in, various different widgets that are included. And there's two versions of web app builder. There's the one that's included with ArcGIS Online, and then there's the developer edition, and so we'll cover some of the differences between those. And the way that you access web app builder is through ArcGIS as well. So similar to the process that I just showed of sharing out a web map, instead of choosing to create a web app and using the templates here, I can actually choose the web app builder. And so I would go through and create my app here. And then that brings me into the web app builder interface. And so I now have the ability to get a little bit more creative with the way I want to create this application. I can interact with different themes, change the themes around, but more importantly, I can add all of these different widgets. And there are a whole suite of widgets that are included with the web app builder that you can add to your web applications. And then the last thing they're going to cover in this one is Survey 123. And so Survey 123 is another, relatively new but very powerful application that enables you to get information from the field. And a little bit different than some of our other field mobile applications. This one's very much more logic-based. So there's questions, and if the user answers a question a certain way, then they're presented with another set of options to fill out information and collect that. And so this tech session will cover some of the basics of how to get started with Survey 123. And then the last tech session in our WebGIS series is configuring real-time information in geoanalytics. And really this one's going to cover a little bit of an intro on ArcGIS Enterprise. This is something that we've sort of rebranded at 10.5. Really there's not a ton of new parts to ArcGIS Enterprise, but what it's done is really brought all of our technology together under one sort of umbrella. When it comes to WebGIS and whether you put that on premise or serve that out in the cloud. So we're going to talk about some of the fundamentals of ArcGIS Enterprise. We'll also talk about the GeoEvent server. That's a very important component to ArcGIS Enterprise and what GeoEvent server capabilities provide. And again, we're going to frame this all within the context of looking at water loss. And then the last one is Insights. So if you're not familiar, Insights is also a very powerful application. It's new at 10.5, and so we'll cover some of the basics of Insights and how to get started with Insights. So I'm just going to do a quick little demonstration for you of Insights. Let me sign into my portal here. All right, so this is Insights. So Insights allows you to create these things called workbooks, and so this is where you effectively store all of your information. So I've got one here on water main analysis, but I'm going to look at another one to analyze water main breaks. So I would start a new workbook here, and right away I can connect to some information. So it's going to show me the information that's available to me in my portal here. So I've got a couple of layers of information that I want to share or that I want to work with, and that's water mains and water main breaks. So I can add that information to my workbook, and it will create these cards. So each one of these each one of these layers has its own card and its own map. Now this is pretty similar to the way a lot of our other technology works. But one of the things I can do is I can link this information together. So I can come in here and I can create a relationship between these two data sets. So I'm going to create a relationship between mains and main breaks, and I'm going to define what that relationship looks like. So I'm going to define this based on the facility ID of both of these. And go ahead and say done and finish. So now effectively when I interact with information on one card, it's going to highlight the information on the other. It's hard to see in this example here, but when I clicked on this water main break here, it highlighted the segment of pipe that water main break took place on. So one of the other things I can do is I can chart some information. So maybe I want to look at my water main breaks and start looking at these and analyzing these water main breaks to see if I can determine any patterns. So one of the things I can do here is create a chart of the leaks when they started, maybe by year. Oops, that was supposed to be a chart. Right, so I can see right away that I've got a lot more leaks that took place in 2016 than did in 2015. Maybe I want to analyze these by month, so I can simply drag the month over here. And now I can see that in November we had a very high number of water main breaks. Right, and I can click on those November breaks, and it's going to highlight those for me right here in the other card where they show on the map, and then also display the segments of pipe where we have breaks happening in November. I can also drag some other information in here. Maybe I want to look at, how much water did we actually lose as a result of these breaks. So now I can see that in November, with all of those breaks, we actually lost over 800,000 gallons of water. And so I could start to dig into this information and, try to determine, maybe why this is happening. Are there certain trends? Are there certain things like pipe age that might be contributing to this? And one of those things might be water pressure. So I can connect to some additional data here. And if I say add data, maybe I have a spreadsheet of all of my water pressure calls. So I can browse here and I can add this spreadsheet of water pressure. And so now I can map this, I can enable the location on this information, and I can tell it what in the spreadsheet I want to use for my location. In this case, I want to use the address, and it's going to automatically pick up for me all of the address fields. Go ahead and run that. And now I can add this to this card and then create a map. And maybe I want to look at things like a heat map. Maybe I wanted to style this by heat map so I can show, the density of high pressure water calls or something like that. So that's just a quick overview of Insights. Just wanted to kind of get you guys introduced to it. Like I said, during this tech session, we're really going to be focusing on Insights as a pretty powerful analytical tool to help us solve some water loss challenges. So moving on to one of the other tech sessions that I think is really important is this data salad tech session, slicing, dicing, and serving it to users. It's one of my favorites, partially just because of the clever name that somebody came up with. But it's going to cover some pretty important...
That was Andrew, Jason.
What's that?
I believe that was Andrew that came up with that name.
It was definitely Andrew, yes.
Yeah. I like your picture there of the salad. That's nice.
Yeah, that was appropriate. So really what it's going to focus on is this process of ETL. If you've had conversations with Esri lately or you've seen some of our presentations, it's really something that we talk about a lot because GIS has expanded so much beyond just the traditional GIS data that there's now a need to get data from all kinds of different sources, different business systems. And the way that we do that often is ETL. Rather than hardwiring all these systems together, we just pull some information out of the system and then bring it into GIS. And we do that through ETL. And if you don't know what ETL stands for, it's extract, translate, and load, meaning we pull it out, we do some stuff with it, and then we load it back into GIS. And so we'll cover the process of that and some of the tools, specifically the data interoperability extension that's part of ArcGIS. We'll also cover ArcGIS Pro tasks because moving information around and doing things like ETL can often be automated. And so ArcGIS Pro features these things called tasks, if you're not familiar. And so they can really help to define a process for doing that that's repeatable and that you can rerun and build in some checks and balances and things like that as part of your work. And so we'll cover that as part of the tech session. And then the last piece is ArcGIS for AutoCAD. So many organizations have a combination of GIS and CAD. And so it doesn't always make sense to take that CAD data out of CAD and bring it in GIS. Sometimes you might want to go the other way and bring that GIS data into its native CAD environment. And so we'll cover the process for utilizing some of those tools. Another pretty big challenge that we've had discussions with organizations over the last year is sharing information with customers. And so we wanted to cover this in a tech session, and really there are a lot of our ArcGIS for water solutions that are designed around this. We're going to cover some of those solutions, such as sharing outage information and capturing service issues and those. But then moving beyond that, looking at things like story maps. How can you ultimately share and effectively tell the story that you need to with your GIS information? And we're going to cover some customer examples. And so I've chose a couple of my favorite customer examples here. I think I need to, well, maybe.
No worries, Jason. I'm happy with that demo you just finished. I mean, Insights is really new. That went pretty smooth.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, yeah, for some reason I'm not able to show my customer examples, but during the tech session we'll definitely be covering a lot of customer examples and showing information that's out there. Another thing that's going to be covered in this is open data. And so building an open data site, and we'll take a look at some of the open data sites that are available out there. I know they're planning to highlight some of the local Florida organizations that have already embraced open data as well.
Well, and Jason, on the open data, I mean, that's the one thing I think is of interest for our water utility folks and, of course, our water resource folks. The water resource organizations typically have always been very, involved with the open data communities, but more and more utilities are being asked to share their information. And I don't think a lot of our users understand that, with some of the new open data tools, you can kind of get rid of all those midnight FTP scripts that run in the middle of the night and kind of package all of your data. With our open data, you can now kind of register with various open data sites, and it really just, it's a configuration now. So you kind of go about your daily business with your enterprise GIS information, but our open data tools just are able to package that and present it to the community without having to kind of worry about all this other programming that takes place. I mean, so it really is, from both the utility perspective and the water resource perspective, our open data tools have really come a long way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think you're right on with a lot of people don't understand that technology and how to effectively make that data available. So yeah, that's one of the big things that we're going to be covering as part of that. The last one that I wanted to share was flood, protecting people and property with GIS. I think it's especially relevant right now. So we'll get into, what is ArcGIS for flood. We have a whole suite of solutions around this. We'll also talk about some of the other tools and capabilities that you can utilize, such as ArcHydro. And so we have a story map here that kind of talks about some of the flood solutions that I thought I would just kind of walk through real quick as well. So flood management with ArcGIS, right? How to effectively prepare for, plan, and respond to flood. Part of that is understanding when the flood is coming, bringing in some of that national data that we've been talking about, and understanding, in real time, what's actually happening. What does the rainfall look like, and how does that relate to flooding? What will the flood look like, right? So we've got some tools to help understand the magnitude of the flood. What does that look like at a 10-foot flood stage versus 20-foot flood stage? You look at 30-foot flood stage, and even a 40-foot flood stage, right? So you can really start to convey the information and understand the full impact of what a flood will look like, if it reaches this magnitude. And then taking that one step further is who will actually be affected. And so there's some pretty powerful but simple tools to help understand this. So bringing in some of that living atlas data and that demographic information. If I have a 40-foot flood stage, what does the impact of that look like? Here I can see that there's 13,000 people that will ultimately be impacted by that. 1,300 of those are seniors. We've got 1,400 households with disabilities, and the average home value is around $169,000 in this particular area. So really understanding the impact of flooding. And then planning out your response. And unfortunately that one's not going to work for me, but this one's sharing out information like evacuation zones and sharing roadblock type information in a very similar fashion. So with that, that's really all I wanted to cover today. Just wanted to give you guys some ideas of what the tech sessions will ultimately be about and do a little bit deeper dive. So I hope to see all of you in Florida. With that, I'll hand it back to Krista.
Thanks, Jason. I like the sad little face there.
Yeah, no.
It could be worse.
Well, and it definitely shows everyone that these webinars are live, and we use our own technology here.
Yeah, I'm
see
sure
here.
people can relate. They've probably seen the sad face before.
I've got a lot going on in there. I'm using couple of different ArcGIS Online orgs and portal and everything else, so I think my credentials didn't necessarily make it through.
Yeah. Well, so I guess Krista, for our Q&A, I think you said there's a couple questions that came through.
There were a few questions, but before I get started on those, I am neglected to mention the social at the Water Conference. So that is also an activity that Esri hosts during the Water Conference. We are having our social the first night, so that would be Tuesday night. I'm going to go ahead and leave that a mystery to you. But David and I and the rest of our team have challenged our events team to find us a great venue and to develop a social that's going to outdo last year's, which was pretty amazing, if I say so myself. I had a good time last year at the Speakeasy, and I'm hoping that our social this year will be just as great. So if you're attending the conference, be sure to keep an eye out for the details of our Tuesday night social.
Well, I think, the fact that we're in Florida, and I think that it will be in the evening with hundreds of water professionals and possibly adult beverages and alligators. I mean, what can go wrong?
Live alligators or alligator appetizers?
Who knows? Yeah, so no, we say we're dotting I's and crossing T's on venues, so we'll be able to hopefully get that information on the website. But yeah, no, lots of great venues in Orlando, and so I think we've picked a winner, and we'll try to get that information out as soon as possible. But it is a great time to sit back after a full day of information and really get to know each other and just talk about a day in the life of a water professional and how GIS helps that. But also, if you spend all night talking about that, that's no. Talk about your motorcycles and your water skiing and your dogs and pets and kids and things of that nature. So, anyway, questions.
Okay, so just to clarify, we had a couple questions about the flood activities that are happening on Thursday. We have the flood symposium, which is a half day. It's going to be from about 8:30 to noon, and then we have added the flood workshop, which is going to be after lunch until about 5. Yes, these sessions are included with your water conference registration. So if you're already registered or if you're planning to register, that registration includes the flood activities on Thursday. Next, we had a question about the technical sessions and how do they sign up for the technical sessions. So I can answer this one. There's no sign up for the tech sessions. They're going to be offered during the conference, and you just attend the one that you're interested in, very similar to the Esri User Conference if you've been to that conference before. The tech sessions, there are several that will be presented at the same time, so you will have to choose the one that's most applicable to you, and you may end up missing one that you wanted to see, but we did our best to try to differentiate the topics and schedule them hopefully well. We'll get that feedback when we do the survey. Another question concerning the technical sessions were if they were going to be recorded. Sadly, no, our tech sessions at the Water Conference will not be recorded. We have discussed this option with our teams, and we're hoping in the future to bring it to our conference. We're just not there yet. Let's see, we had another question, Jason, I think I could answer, but I'll send it over to you. A question about configuring the web mapping, and you showed our web app builder. They want to know if that's something that that's more configured for IT staff, or how would you categorize those types of tools?
I would say with the web app templates and the web app builder that's part of ArcGIS Online, that's definitely geared more for GIS professionals or really anybody within the org. They don't have to have IT involvement because they can create the web apps and share the web apps directly through ArcGIS Online. When it gets into Web App Builder Developer Edition, that one oftentimes does cross over into needing to have some IT involvement, because when you build web apps with the developer edition, you actually deploy them in your own environment. You don't deploy them into your hosted ArcGIS online portal, so that requires accessing a web server and web security and some things like that. So hopefully that answers the question.
And Jason, I'd like to kind of add on to that, that's the biggest difference I have seen in Esri technology, compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, of course, even, but within the last year or two, we've really added on to the configuration concept. So, there are those tools that allow virtually anybody with no coding experience to create very useful apps, and they all leverage the concept of the web map, right? And so that's why we work so hard with publishing services and getting, moving between your, on-premise geodatabase and these web services that would be either by server, it's behind your firewall, or up in ArcGIS online. It's just a web map that allows you to bring all this information together. And really, Web App Builder then is all of those tools, those coding examples, those that allow you to add tools on top of that information. So I mean, I've seen just an amazing apps that folks have built just from Web App Builder, and dragging and dropping certain widgets and really making it their own, all through configuration. It's just really right-click, configure, hit save, publish. And well, you have a web app that can be used on your intranet, on everyone's web browsers. But the important thing is that same information, that exact same web map, that could be feeding, your web map that's being used in Collector and any of our mobile tools. So it really is, as you kind of mentioned. I mean, I can. No coding experience required, and you can build useful apps. But if you are IT and you have, access to those more advanced tools, you can do amazing things. So it really is. It's been a huge change as we've progressed in the last couple of years of how we've made very sophisticated applications useful to people simply by right-click, configure, save, publish. So. Just kind of want to add that little piece on there.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, that's a really good point, and that's really why we structured the 3 WebGIS tech sessions, is to help people understand that whole concept of web map and WebGIS, and the fact that they really don't need to involve IT in a lot of cases with their work.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've used these tools myself, and I've worked in IT before, but I wouldn't consider myself an IT person first. I used to do GIS work as a GIS specialist, and these tools came out since I've been at Esri, so I'm not touching the software every day, and I was still able to go in there and utilize them. So I think it's a great tool, and almost anyone who's in GIS or IT would be able to utilize those. So going back to our questions, we didn't get a lot of them. We did get a couple about paper sessions. So our paper sessions are full. As mentioned in one of the comments, it is closed. If you think you have an absolutely great paper session, a presentation that just needs to be given, go ahead and reach out to me. I know that I do have the option to list some presentations as backup presentations, which means that if someone were to drop or couldn't come to the conference, I can pull those backup papers into a slot. Specifically, I did have a paper drop for our flood session. So if any of you out there are working in flood and you have something to share with a group, reach out to me and let me know, and we might be able to fit you into a slot and have you present at the conference. So again, just reach out to me if you have questions about that. Another item that I did not mention earlier that might be useful to you is that the Doubletree Hotel is about 15 minutes away from Universal downtown, so it's about a 15-minute walk. There is a path that's lit and it goes to Universal, so Wednesday night or Sunday night when we're not having our social, that's an easy walk for you to go check out Universal and see what's going on. There's a lot of restaurants and activities over there. We've been there before. It's pretty cool, so that's another benefit to our location.
Yes, and so for all of you Harry Potter fans out there, you must see Diagon Alley and Hogwarts. Yeah, it's some pretty awesome stuff over there at Universal. So, not that I would know anything about that.
Of course not, David. All right, I think that's going to just about wrap up our sneak peek. Hopefully we answered your questions. If you have other questions or if we didn't answer them to your specificity, is that a word? Anyways, if you have any other questions, reach out to me. I'll be happy to contact you and answer any questions you have. Hopefully I'll see all of you in Orlando next month. Thank you.